Hello, friends. My name is Pauline Nguyen, coming to you all the way from Australia. I'm known as the spiritual entrepreneur. I'm known as co-owning Red Lantern, the most awarded Vietnamese restaurant in the world. I play the role of mother of two. Mia is 18, Jethro is 13. I play the role of an international speaker. I play the role of an author. I play the role of coach, mentor, teacher, and sometimes I play the role of CEO in multiple businesses.
Welcome to The Vietnamese. I'm your host, Kenneth Nguyen. Being part of a culture of nearly 100 million Vietnamese people in the world today comes with a lot of pain, proud history, and privilege. Join me as I highlight and explore the Vietnamese experience from all over the world.
What does it mean to be Vietnamese to you nowadays?
Oh, I love this question. I wrote a book in 2007. I won Debut Writer of the Year for it, and it became an international bestseller. It's called Secrets of the Red Lantern. And I write in the first chapters what it means to be Vietnamese. Come on, we're talking about courage. These days, I speak of calm courage. We're talking about resilient people, but this sense of having resonating resilience. And then, of course, grit, but it has to be tacit grit, this unspoken grit. When you're talking about the Vietnamese people, you're talking about a people who many countries have tried to dominate and take over, right? We're talking the Japs, the Mongols, the French, even the almighty Americans couldn't defeat the little people in black pajamas running in and out of the rice paddy fields, right? We're freaking ninjas. And so for me nowadays, to answer your question, to be Vietnamese is or shall I say, an evolved Vietnamese, is to have this incredible sense of determination, calm courage, resonating resilience, and tacit grit in all that we do.
Wonderful. Can you tell me about your family's journey from Vietnam to Australia?
You know, I don't think that it's a unique experience. We were one of the first to escape Vietnam. I am otherwise also known as a boat person, as many of us are. We spent 9 days out at sea. I was 3 years old at the time. My brother Lewis was 2. We ended up in Thailand in the Dinh Dang refugee camp. We stayed there for a year. My brother Luke was born in the refugee camp where he was born in the lean-to tent. Many of you may know he's a world famous chef. He was born in the refugee camp. And we came to Australia with, like so many, with nothing. And growing up, which is also very much a part of my story, is that my father suffered terribly from PTSD, but we didn't define it as that at the time. So growing up was incredibly violent, lots of emotional, spiritual, physical, mental abuse. And so through that journey, we also worked in my father's businesses. He was also the serial entrepreneur. We had a video library, an ice cream parlor, a cafe, a restaurant, as well as a driving school on the side, and us kids provided the child labor. So I started working full-time at a very young age. I started working full-time from the age of 7, and like many Vits who immigrated to a new country, we also had to get top grades, right? Or else a firm beating ensued. So that was pretty much my life. I look back on it now and I see it all as my training, right?
Yeah. Now, your father and the trauma that you endured, how did you figure out how to kind of get out from under that?
I ran away from home. I ran away. I finished my HSC. So in Australia, that's equivalent to 16, 17 during those years. And I ran away and I spent many years hiding from my father. I grew up the most miserable kid in school. And I realized that I can't live like this. This cannot be my life. And so I mustered all the courage a young teenage girl could muster, and I ran away from home. And my father and his men looked for me for many years. I think I was away for about a good 5 years before we reconciled. So I put myself through university, and I worked in some of the finest restaurants under the tutelage of some of the finest chefs and sommeliers in Sydney. So I worked my ass off to put myself through university.
During those 5 years, did you keep in touch with your brother, your mother, any family members?
I kept in touch with my brothers. They helped me. They helped me with my escape, and I didn't contact my mother until several years later because she begged me to, and so it was a clandestine relationship until I reconciled with my dad.
And now, how is it? Has he gotten help? Has he gotten better?
The book Secrets of the Red Lantern had played a major role in our reconciliation. My father read it and he had two choices. He could reject it or he could learn from it. And so to look back on that journey, I mean, I was receiving letters from people all around the world after the launch of that book, from Vietnam vets who read the story and thought my father a hero, from children from abused families, wives who were also abused, and surprisingly, which was so profound for me, surprisingly, so many letters from all around the world from the children of survivors of the Holocaust. Same story, different war. And so it was such a profound journey, which very much changed the trajectory of my life. And my father read it and we reconciled after that. He never gave an apology, but he did give a lot of acknowledgement. And he said that there's a right time and a right place for everything. And had he read the book some 10 years ago, he probably would have exploded and beaten the crap out of all of us. But it was the right time. The universe has this beautiful way of handing to us that which it knows that we can handle at any given point in time. And so how is it now? We're all friends. We pay him out all the time. I don't know if you guys have that term or phrase in the US, pay him out.
No,
As
what does
in
that
poking, making fun of, joking with our parents all the time. And so we have a friendship relationship now. We all like to drink and we all like to eat and we all like to party. So it's very amicable.
Do you ever revisit those dark times with him to kind of process or synthesize the events that happen in your youth?
I don't believe in revisiting traumatic experiences. There is trauma. Trauma is the body's reaction, the body's memory to a traumatic event. And so I have no need to revisit the traumatic events. I'm a very different person now. A lot of us suffer because we feel the need to revisit traumatic events. In my work as a coach, as a healer, as a spiritual teacher, we don't revisit. What for? There have been so many different life experiences and so many lenses. To revisit is now revisiting from a very different level of mind. And so we don't revisit the traumatic event if we have healed the trauma being the body's response, the body's reaction, the terrain in which holds the memory. And so when we can revisit a traumatic event, or to call it a past event, with the emotion, then it's called memory, then it's still called a traumatic event. But when we can revisit the event without the emotion and come from a place of healing, a place of neutrality, then it's called evolution. And so how do we know we have healed? When we can have the opposite response, the opposite reaction to it. Whatever still triggers us, we still need to heal, you see. And so if we can go back to the traumatic event and say the opposite of, man, I used to be really angry, I'm not angry anymore. I used to be really sad, I'm not sad anymore. I used to be very frustrated, I'm not frustrated anymore. Then you know that you have healed.
Where did you learn that from? Because I can imagine that paradigm is not an overnight understanding. It's not, it feels like another evolution of somebody who's gone through trauma to kind of understand that paradigm. Where did you pick that up and how did it occur for you?
It all starts with the decision, Ken, the decision that I don't want to be this person. I don't want to hold on to the victim narrative. But that unfortunately is what so many people do,
Yeah.
right? Because it gives them this huge amount of significance. Who am I if I don't have these memories? Who am I if I'm not this angry person? Who am I if I don't have this dis-ease and dis-ease? And so to revisit gives a lot of people that sense of significance. You know, the ones who always could remind you of how hard their life is, that is low vibration. That's what's going to make you sick. So it starts with the decision to say, I don't want to be this person. We're here on this earth to do three things. First is to evolve. Second is to push humanity forward. And third is to do it with joy. To evolve, to push humanity forward, and to do it with joy. And so the decision to say, I don't want to be this person. I'm tired of this person. I'm going to take these glasses off and put on a new lens. But who do I need in my orbit to help me to get to where I want to go faster? And so I went in search of teachers. I went in search of lessons. I went in search of philosophies and movements, and basically ingest, and I still do ingest knowledge, ingest information, because my decision to practice self-leadership and self-mastery, because our job here is to evolve. And so where did I get it from? First, the decision, and then from a plethora of teachers and coaches and spiritual teachers as well.
And who are some of the early inspiration, whether it's books or people that lived or didn't live at the time? Who are some of your inspirations as you were changing into this different person?
Most of them are real life teachers and real life shamans. The work that I do is always science and spirituality. And so, which is why I teach and practice spiritual entrepreneurship. It's not spiritual hippie or we don't play in the woo. It's a little bit woo, but we certainly don't play in the voodoo. It is very much science and spirituality, because I believe that science is what bridges cultures. In order to assist anyone who is ready to be assisted, to give them some sense of science backing, always makes them feel a little bit more assured when they're new to this work. And then when they're in the orbit, we understand that there's a whole lot of space-time magic that happens as well. And so to understand first in my work, there's always the semantic, the approach where we have to have had some sort of theory training. My training is in NLP and meta NLP, as well as the somatic, how the biology works, how the body works. And so we do the somatic work. Is the emotion, is the trauma stuck in parts of your organ? Do you need to change your breath technique so that you can become more alkaline and less acidic? Do you need to practice Qigong to move the energy centers? Do you need to practice yoga so that you have mastery over self? Do you need to practice meditation and activation? And then we, of course, do the somatic, which is where the shamanic work comes in, the energy medicine. And so my work is a combination of the semantic, the theory that I've spent many, many years learning, and then, of course, the somatic of the body. And then the somatic. And when we combine the semantic, the somatic, and the somatic, we get results very, very fast. Because semantics alone, talk therapy alone, takes too long and it does not work. Talk therapy makes you revisit the traumatic event, whereas semantic coupled with somatic work deals with the trauma, how it appears on your body. Are you tired of feeling that way? Let's do some things to change that. And then, of course, the somatic, accessing assistance from other dimensions other than this 3D dimension, this third dimension. This third dimension that we live in.
I'm going to have to unpack a lot here because obviously, I prepare for, Red Lantern and the story of how you got into that world. But why don't we jump right into the NLP, the meta NLP, because that's what's coming up right now, if you don't mind.
I can do whatever you want, Ken.
Wonderful. Okay, so
go in with the flow, baby.
I know a little bit about NLP. But if you can explain what NLP is, and then what difference is meta NLP, because this is the first time I've heard of meta NLP.
Okay, so NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. It is a psychological approach. It is about human behavior. And how can I put it in simple terms? We become language surgeons. It The co-founders are John Grinder and Richard Bandler. John Grinder's brother, Michael Grinder, is a mentor of mine and a collaborator of mine. We work in non-verbal communication. I am an international speaker. I belong to an agency called Ode, who represent the top 50 non-celebrity speakers in the world. So a lot of my work is very much about the non-verbals on stage, to speak with palms up. It changes our tonality, changes our voice, versus speaking with the palm down with pauses, tonality. And so the work that we do is not only the linguistic work, but also the non-verbals. And so it is, we become language surgeons. I love how we can also continue to reframe in the work of NLP, so that it is never too late to have had a happy childhood. I like to explain NLP like that, so that it's never too late to have had a happy childhood. And so it relates to your thoughts, it relates to the language, it relates to the patterns of behavior. And so as a NLP coach, we look for patterns and we look for reframes of experiences, so that it can have a very specific outcome. And so to have learned meta NLP meta is on top of or around. So the meta on the meta, if that is your pattern, what is on top of and what is around? And so it is the more perspectives that we can hold, the more free we will become. And now this is a lot of Ken Wilber's work as well, with integral semantics, integral theory. And that is, in a nutshell, do you still live? So I'm a developmental coach. I coach people to the next stage of their development. The sad truth is, some people reach their 60s and 70s still at the conventional stage of development. Do you want to move on so that you can become more of a post-conventional or post-conventional stage, where you can see things from multiple perspectives? And then we come with it with a transcendent mind. A transcendental mind does not just see one perspective. We open our aperture to see multiple perspectives. The more perspectives we can see, the more free we will become. And so, for example, a first-person perspective from a very immature stage of development, it's all about me, 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 me. What's in it for me? And they speak a lot from I. Or you can move to the second person perspective. Okay, now it's about you and me. How do my actions affect you, and how does this affect one another in a relationship way? Or we can get a third person perspective, where we see everything almost like a laboratory. We see our business like a laboratory. We see a situation or a circumstances. What would happen if we did that? What would happen if we changed the way we did things? And so everything is from a third level of mind, seeing it from a third level of mind. A fourth person perspective will see systems. That's how the system works. What role are you going to play in that system? That's how her system works. And then when we see it from a fourth person perspective, we understand that there's now a whole lot of compassion. Compassion comes online. They are like that because that's how the system works. That is how the school system works. How then can we play that? And so there's very little rise, you see. We look at things from a systematic approach. And then there's the fifth person perspective, which is from a spirit-centric perspective, where you can see all four perspectives, but preference none of them. And so coaching in this respect is not therapy. We only coach those who are of sound mind. I have to make that clear. And so it's we could say we coach individuals who are very ready to walk down the long hall of mirrors, and not everyone is ready to do that, right? Yes. Because they still come from a victim frame of mind.
And that's what I was going to ask next. You clarified it at the last few statements there. Because my mind goes back to if you have somebody in front of you, a client that is slow to kind of form into the coaching or slow to sort of shift into this different mindset that you're talking about, these different levels, is there some sort of cognitive ability that every person comes with that might be uncoachable, or
Yes.
and do you run into that, and what are the major reasons why there's these blockages for them?
So in my experience, there's two types of coaches and two types of coachees or mentees. Let's put it this way. Skepticism is a personality trait. Cynicism is a coping mechanism. And so I don't really have a problem with skeptics because so much of my work is science-backed, and I have an abundance of testimonials from students and clients I've had over the years whose lives have been changed through this work. So I don't have a problem with skepticism. Skepticism also comes with curiosity. It's cynicism that I don't associate with. I also am not for everyone, and I make that point very, very clear. So I filter my clients from the get-go. Once they come to my work, and I'm not mainstream either because my DNA is not for mainstream. Once they come in or make contact, they have to fill in a questionnaire. And then I read through the answers and I see if they still have victim dialogue, the victim narrative, because there's the type of coachees and mentees who like to be seen or like to be known as having a coach. Oh, Pauline's my coach, or there's my coach. But if they don't put in the work and they don't put in the practice, there is no execution. And then there are those who actually execute. And so I always say, if you do the work, you will get the pay. And when you get the pay, you get to play a very different game of life. If you don't do the work, you don't get the pay. I am not your healer. I teach you how to heal yourself. And so, Ken, I'm very discerning with who I work with because I protect my energy, I protect my vibration, and I only want to work with those who are a pleasure. And if it's not a pleasure, I am the first to refund the money. I'm the first to cut ties because my life and my energy depends upon it. I would rather give my energy and my expertise to those who are ready and willing, and we get to play together rather than being a case where I'm pushing shit uphill. I have no desire to change someone's mind. If your mind is, I've sacked probably 3 clients in my lifetime. Those who are still at a very young developmental age or a very young soul age, and they're just not ready. And also there have been those who I have said, it's not a coach that you want, it's therapy that you're after.
Wow.
I am not a therapist.
So
does that answer your question? Did that answer both your questions to break down meta NLP in a very, I guess, fundamental way, as well as how I work?
Clear. It's very clear. You can't really work with somebody who's not ready. And that was my real question is, does this change people? These techniques change people, but I think you have to, what you answered, you have to be ready. You have to be at the point in your life and your soul's journey to get to the point of being able to open and execute at a higher level.
And then, of course, it also comes down to your personality type, your personality trait. I was on a discovery call with she was an anesthetist recently, and she's a particular, what we call them type 2 personalities on the Enneagram. And she wanted to change and wanted to get out of her own way, but she was so much pride. Type 2 Enneagrams are driven by this sense of pride. And so just to hold one mirror was like damaged her pride. And I said, I don't think you're ready to get out of your own way. And this journey is going to be very difficult for both of us. And so I'm not for you. This is not going to be a good fit. I wish you well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I have every right to do that.
Yeah. What was your career trajectory when you were growing up, when you were coming out of university, when you were developing into your own? What did you want to do?
I actually did really well in my HSC, which is equivalent to your SATs. It was literally beaten into me by my father. And I completed a Bachelor of Arts in Communications degree at university, majoring in film and television, journalism. So that's what I did. And then graduating, I lived in Paris, London for 5 years. I worked in the third largest post-production company in Europe, and then came back and worked in film and television in Australia in the year 2000. And I started freelancing, but it was during that time where I really recognized that I can't have a boss. I could only be my own boss. And so it was beautiful timing when my brother Luke said that he wanted to open a restaurant. And he's a very, very capable man. And it was at that time that I said, look, I've just come back to Australia. I know a chef, and I'd love to assist you with opening your restaurant. And his dream was always to up-level the community, society's view of Vietnamese cuisine and Vietnamese culture. In those years, it was still very oriented around gangsters, immigrants. It was still very much about home cooking, kitsch, family restaurants with kitsch decor, formica tables, really home style cooking. And we really wanted to up level that with professional service, a good wine list, matching wines, and experienced and qualified chef and kitchen. And so I assisted him with that, with the intention of going back and starting my, film producing career after having finished my stint with Red Lantern. But then I too was bitten by the business and entrepreneurial bug, and that was the beginning of our journey.
When you started in the food arena, I'm wondering if it's the same or if it's similar to the US, where Vietnamese food at the time, even today, is not valued as Italian foods or Japanese foods, although we put so much labor and energy into producing Vietnamese food, but oftentimes the price points are very, very different. They're lower. And let's just call it what it is. Does that happen in Australia? Did it happen at the time? And did you have to deal with the pricing issue?
Well, we were the first. Red Lantern was the first to really take Asian cuisine to another level. And we did it in a way that was still very accessible, and we were more expensive than the family-run Vietnamese restaurants. And those who still preferred the family-run Vietnamese restaurants would complain about how expensive Red Lantern was. You can get cheaper in Cabramatta. You can get cheaper in Marrickville. It's like, yes, you can. But we're also paying for professional staff, top quality ingredients, a kick-ass wine list with sommelier, proper management, proper reservations. And so all those things come into consideration. And then it was trendy because we were, cool and hip and happening. And then it became trendy, and more Asian restaurants of that caliber came about. So for us, it was a natural evolution. And, the restaurant industry, we've just survived 2 lockdowns, which the whole experience was a shit show, but still we're here. It's been 20 years now since we've been in business.
Yeah.
It's the Sydney dining scene has evolved in a big way. So to answer your question, there are more and more restaurants that are top quality, expensive, and of course there are the other levels as well.
So Vietnamese food and cuisine in Australia doesn't really, it sounds like it's accepted that the price points can be higher.
Correct.
Yeah.
Obviously, where I live, right? I live in the city. I don't live in a highly populated Vietnamese
Right,
area.
right. And that makes a huge difference
Yeah.
because those comparisons, oftentimes it's from inside of our community saying that why are
Yes.
they charging higher prices? But it's the total experience that we're looking at here.
Yeah, and also I think also their lack of knowledge or ignorance in some cases to what it takes. They don't understand about superannuation and taxes and
Yeah.
um, uh, wage rates and rent and advisors and mentors and databases and EDMs. And they don't understand that there's so many factors as well as marketing and all of that. So, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay.
How did you make the restaurant stand out in the early years against the competition?
See, here's the thing, Ken. We've never seen the top restaurants in Sydney as our competition. It's very much how we operate in life because we are our biggest competition. We have to make our own rules. We have to run our own race. So why would I waste my valuable time and my valuable energy being bothered by and worrying about what the others are
Mm.
doing? I know where I would rather place my valuable time and energy, and that's on this internal ecology here, as well as the internal ecology of Red Lantern. How can we better ourselves so the competition is very much us? And so the credo at Red Lantern has always been that it is, and it's a movement. It's a movement to uplift the human spirit through the alchemy of flavor, hospitality, and heart. And so when we understand that, it is a movement to uplift the human spirit through the alchemy of flavor, hospitality, and heart. We play a very different game. We are our biggest competition.
Yeah, clearly you play a different game. And I'm wondering again, where does that thinking, where did it originate from? You explained other thoughts that you had, your evolution of the ideas that you had earlier, but within the construct of this restaurant and competing with your own selves, where does this come from? Because clearly, a lot of people start restaurants, but aren't able to kind of tap into that voice of competing with yourself.
Where does it come from? It comes from the leaders. Where does it come from the leaders? Because we are consistently doing the inner work, the internal arts of power and not force. It's a lot of what I teach. Forcing is worrying about what the others are doing. Forcing is we're not afraid of hard work. Please don't misunderstand that. We have more grit than anyone else we know. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here 20 years later in
Right.
what is a very challenging, fickle, and competitive industry. But we made a decision in the early years. We were working 80, 90, 100-hour weeks, week upon week. And we realized we're just repeating what our parents did. We have to, and it was a decision to not ever stop working hard, but we would work hard and work smart. And so things like Luke getting a television gig with SBS, and he's now got television shows all around the world and cookbooks, and Mark had a 6-year stint on a local television station, and I'm traveling the world speaking about the Red Lantern story and writing our books. And so that's called power, this internal power. And when I talk about power, I'm not talking about force. I'm talking about this spiritedness, this unbounded, unbridled energy that uplifts our spirit, that expands our heart, that keeps us creating and staying in the game. And will we be playing the Red Lantern game forever? I don't know. Whatever the next evolution is, will be whatever the next evolution is. And then that, to understand, it's also about influence. To move mountains with the gentlest of touch is what power is about. That's not force. Influencing ourselves, influencing others, influencing the quantum field. It's all about influencing, but playing a game that is not like everyone else. We can't be like everyone else. So where does it come from, Kenneth? I can honestly say it's a genetic disposition, through how we lived, how we had to live our lives as children, and all the things we went through in those years. Perhaps our life today, we use our life when we were growing up as an anti-model to how we do things very differently now.
So I'm imagining you're working 80, 90, 100 hours a week, and you're in the kitchen, you're working the front of the house, you work in the back of the house, just making sure this restaurant runs tip top. At what point do you start transitioning into the spiritual teaching mode?
So it's difficult to tell you at what point. It is the evolution of a human being, should they decide. It all starts with a decision. All starts with a decision to say there must be more to life than this. And so again, it's a genetic, the shamanism, spiritual teaching, it's a genetic disposition. I was born with it. I've been shaman in many lifetimes. How do I know? Because I've done the past life regression work. I've done a whole lot of theory around that. And so whatever we are called to do, whatever we're called to do, just as you were doing something very different to what you're doing now, Ken, when you're pulled to do something, no matter what, it is a calling. It is a calling that has been unlocked in you in this lifetime. And to be, running this podcast with such a purpose, driven by such purpose, is a calling for you. And that takes a whole lot of courage. It takes a whole lot of grit and guts and determination and consistency and persistence. And the universe rewards the unreasonably determined. It rewards us with more inspiration. It rewards us with more energy, more ideas. It rewards us with this sense of magnetism. And so the magnetism is attracting people in our orbit to make life more fun, to make life more inspiring, to help us to get to where we want to go faster. And so it opens more opportunities, which opens more questions and more curiosities. And so this is when I was speaking earlier about the more perspectives we can hold, the more free we can become. And so we have a transcendental mind that can transcend the situation. And that just comes with a whole lot of abundance, right? Because now we can see so many different opportunities and levels of mind, a higher level of mind.
Yes, and I'm hearing it, and I'm hearing the sort of the modern kind of today Pauline, right? The present moment Pauline. But I'm sure a lot of the people that listen are also wondering, how do you go from, somebody who's running a kitchen and running a restaurant and shifting slowly into this sort of like this awareness, or did you have it kind of coming in? And I guess the question is, did you ever have a moment, or has it just been gradually questioning and finding answers?
Yeah.
That's kind of
so what I'm hearing is you need a tangible timeline, Ken, to make sense of it. Is that what I'm hearing?
yes and no. Yeah, yes and no. I just can't imagine you coming out of the universe as a 20-something-year-old person working in this restaurant for 80, 90 hours and head to the, nose to the grind and just working without this sort of like this. It's really like it feels very ancient, the knowledge that you have that you're bringing to the present day Pauline, to me. But there has to be some evolution, and I'm not looking for a timeline. I'm just looking for triggers and
I'm wondering if the timeline would be more helpful. And so when I said before, Luke, we were working 80, 90, 100-hour weeks, and we were tired. I'd actually developed alopecia, which is a condition where the hair falls out due to stress. I was bald for a very long time, and physical aches, pains. all our dreams, all our goals. We wanted to leave a legacy. We wanted to have a great life, and then you get caught in the in the trap. You get caught in that that sense of control. No one can work harder than I can. No one can do this like I can, until that didn't work for us anymore. And
And
so that was when we.
that's what I'm talking about. That alopecia, Pauline, right? Today is two different people. So I'm
Yeah,
trying to find sort of the continuum. Like, how did you get from that to this, right? To today?
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. It was this, it was the decision that we, first of all, I didn't want to be angry anymore. That's one of the things that happens with trauma, right? It gets passed down to the next generation and the next generation. I'm at 32. I made the decision that it was time to have children, and I didn't want to be this angry. I was in error detection mode, which is a prevalent human condition. It was what was passed down to me. It was what was downloaded onto me by my parents. They didn't know any better. And it was a decision. It all starts with the decision. I do not want to be this person for my child. And it started the very sacred journey of looking within. I refuse to be this person. Once the decision is made, then permission to have teachers guide me down the long hall of mirrors, permission to self to say it's okay to not beat yourself up because you are this person. And from there, just this evolution of more learnings. Is that how I've always done myself? This is not who I am. It's who I take myself to be. And so we do the
work.
human behavior, psychological work. But it's not an easy journey. Many people can't do it. To look at yourself and go, fuck, I'm this person. I don't want to be this person. Versus, this is who I am. I'm going to honor myself, and and it's my way or the highway. We don't grow from that. And so a good check-in is always with our heart. Is our heart contracting, or is our heart expansive for this? And it hasn't been an easy journey, Ken. I was an amateur parent for many years until I became a professional parent, a professional human being. And so from there, I wrote The Secrets of the Red Lantern. We chose to do things very differently. Luke did his television book stuff. Mark did his television stuff. And I wrote Secrets of the Red Lantern, which is a very dark and personal memoir, which I disguised as a cookbook so people would buy it. Right. And it worked a treat. I won Debut Writer of the Year. It did really well around the world. And from that, I was pushed onto the stage by my publishers to speak about the book. I traveled the world with international writers' festivals. And it was then that I'm on stage, not showing up like a professional at all, because I hadn't dealt with the demons of the past. There were times when my body froze speaking about the past. Now we're talking about trauma, how the body reacts to talking about the past. I hadn't dealt with it, you see. And so I'm on stage in front of all these people, or I'm at writers' festivals. When I get asked questions like you're asking, I couldn't answer them. That's trauma coming up, trauma coming up. And the decision to say, they don't deserve to see me like this. Come on. What are you going to do to be a better speaker? What are you going to do to be a better communicator? Anyone can speak. Can you communicate with impact, with power? And so began my journey to deal with my demons, giving permission to teachers who could teach me, but with impact and power and fast, and giving myself permission to acquire the skills of stage mastery, of self-mastery, of self-leadership, and then more doors open. And so every time we ascend to a higher level of mind, to a higher level of thinking, there are always more masters waiting for us. And that is the journey. So does that answer your question, Ken?
Very clearly.
Yeah, the timeline worked. But I'm also of the belief that the life we live are the lessons that we teach. And so I have students and clients all around the world. Whatever I learn, I teach. I learn, I teach. And so it keeps me on my toes and it keeps me continually evolving, and they come after me. And so there are many students who've been with me for many, many years, because as I evolve, they evolve. As they evolve, I evolve.
Thank you for that. It's a much needed, because my brain works in sort of like I want to see the transitions.
I understand.
Yes. So, did you have a an awakening, or with the shaman identity? Did you kind of go through the world knowing this was there, and all of a sudden you had a breakthrough, some sort of event that happened, or did you always know it and it just kind of developed as you just expanded this knowledge of yourself as the years gone went by?
A little bit of both, Ken. As a child, I had, they would call it gifts, I guess, but everyone has these gifts. It Shamanism is a way of life. It's a way of being. The shamanism that I teach is all about nature's medicine. How can we access nature's medicine? Because we are nature. We shut ourselves off to nature. We think, oh, we have to go out into nature. But would you or would you not agree that we are nature?
For sure.
We are nature. And we've been, I think that is the major cause of a lot of dis-ease and disease today, to forget that we are nature. And so the shamanism that I teach is about nature's medicine. It's about moving mountains with the gentleness of touch. It's about magnetism. It's about influence. It's about understanding how we can influence ourselves first before we can influence others, before we can start to influence the quantum field. The shamanism that I teach ultimately is about self-leadership and self-mastery. We do a lot of activation, shamanic activation, through voice, through sound. And so, may I ask you, Ken, do you love nature? Do you feel expansive when you are in nature?
100%. Yes.
And what about sound? Are there some sounds? And is there music? Is there vibratory frequencies that give you a sense of calm and peace or inspiration or energy?
Yes, there's composers that do that for me.
Well, then you have a shaman inside of you that is
Mm.
waiting to be unleashed. And so it is that I teach. It is not what I know. A lot of society is, people are always afraid of what they don't understand, right? And so it is very much about personal power, personal freedom, through accessing nature's medicine, which is free. She is free. Mother Earth and Father Sun have looked after us for so very, very long. And I speak through direct experience. I have a plethora of students and clients whose lives have changed through the work that I do and through the teachings that I give to them, because they now have realized their own power, and we are more powerful than we have been led to believe. And so nature is free, and sound, just, did you know that when you want to calm yourself or calm another, the simple act of humming alone activates your vagus nerve, gives you an incredible sense of calm. And with the cultivation of a practice or the cultivation of particular sequence of breath work, we can access our intelligence, and we're not robbed of our intelligence in times of stress or overwhelm or panic. And so these are the shamanistic practices that I teach. So it's not polarizing. It is about tapping into your own personal power, which has yet to be unleashed and unlocked.
Now, this word shamanism in the US, or as I have come to understand it growing up, is linked to a lot of South American sort of shamanistic traditions. The word ayahuasca comes up, and these different formal codified practices exist in the world, specifically in South America. Do you practice a form of codified shamanism, or is it something that is your own self-prescribed form of it?
Um, I have been all around South America. I traveled with my own shaman who is from South America, getting uploads and downloads, Peru, Patagonia, La Titicaca, Cusco. Um, we did ceremony in between Pachamama, Pachatata. So there is ceremony involved.
And
Machu Picchu
can
was
you
very
explain
profound.
can you explain
And so,
ceremony? Yeah, because
yeah,
ceremony that
I
you're talking,
will.
it's a capital
So,
C ceremony here we're talking about.
yeah. So let me just make the distinction between ceremony and ritual. So let's take the Buddhist tradition. We have the altar. We put fruit on there. We put food on there. We get down on our knees. We bow 3 times. We go to temple. There are particular ceremony. That is ceremony. That is the way things have always been. I have learned from many teachers around the world, as well as in Australia. One of my most powerful shamans teaches Aboriginal Indigenous shamanism as well. It's a way of life. It's a way of beingness. And so I think it's with everything. I don't think I believe in this day and age where there is so much knowledge and so much information that is so accessible. I believe that it is our responsibility to take the ceremonies, to take from this teacher, to learn from this teacher, and a continuous evolution to learn from the masters. Right? I only learn from masters. I don't like to dabble. I want to get there fast. And we learn from the masters, but I think it's our responsibility to then take the fundamentals, craft it, and put our own very unique signature on it. And that's how new things are created in the world. Because what's the point in me saying I only learn from this code and I'm going to carry that code forever, and that code somewhere in, the remote towns in Lake Titicaca, and now I'm going to teach it here. That's not even relevant. I live in Sydney, Australia.
Right.
My clients are entrepreneurs. How can I take those fundamentals and craft it in a way so that I can meet my students, meet my clients where they're at? And so when we meet people where they're at, then we can start to uplift and uplevel them. And just like this podcast, how many podcasts are there around the world? So many these days. But Ken, you grab what you know about it and you craft your own unique way, and it becomes now about the Vietnamese people. And so it's our responsibility to take that ceremony and turn it into ritual. Ritual being, now here's my flavor. This is my own ritual now, and I'm going to take it and make it make sense for me, make it relevant for my people, make it relevant for my lifestyle, and then from that creation comes a very, very unique flavor, which adds to the deliciousness of life. Would you not agree?
I completely agree. Very fresh way to see things, and it reminds me of this.
It's also more exciting, Ken. It's less boring. It's more exciting.
It reminds me of this idea where the universe started. If we take this theory of the Big Bang, where it just blew up, and it's just constantly ever expanding, and along with that, sort of these ideas and these synthesis of humans and energies just are completely growing constantly and coming together and breaking apart and coming together, and it's just new things are creating and evolving as we are living and journeying through the universe.
Yes. It has to be.
Yes.
It has to be. There is a part of all of that inside each of us, right? If we are with the Big Bang theory.
And we are part of the stars, and we're part of all of the particles that are ever expanding.
Yes, and and we can talk about the quantum field, the field that exists, a field of energy and information that exists beyond space and time. And I do a lot of work in the quantum, in multidimensionality. And if this concept is very new to your listeners, I have but one strong suggestion, and that is to be open to the possibility, to open your aperture to the possibility. And if this is only you want, this is what you only want to see, carry on. That's okay too.
No, no, that's
We're not here to fix or change anyone. We're only here to speak to those who are ready, because just because you cannot see it, it does not mean it is not real.
well, I'm here to
Just
expand.
because,
I'm here to expand it.
yeah, just
I,
because you don't believe it yet, it doesn't mean it's not true, right?
I'm here to expand this idea because I think that these ancient churches, these ancient modalities of religion, somehow is all related to this quantum business, right?
Yeah.
Somehow our prayers and our mantras and all the things that we think and we, whatever form it comes in to from wherever it comes, is all based on this idea of quantum. Now, can you explain it from your perspective, what you're talking about?
Sure. And I'll break this down as simply as I can, because when we practice, when we heal, when we manifest from there, it's something that needs to be experienced, so that once we have direct experience of it and the direct results of it, then we know that it's true. Whereas, many people need to see this stuff before they believe it. But for those who believe it, man, the stuff that we can see. It's not to see it, is to believe it. But when you believe it, you get to see more powerfully than ever before. If I can please pre-frame this by saying that I am not a quantum physicist, nor am I a scientist. I speak only from direct experience. And so when you understand the fundamentals, it is that if this is how I recognize how I live my life, if I understand this and recognize that this is how I could live my life, how can I now benefit from these understandings? How can I now benefit from this powerful new world view? And so that's just the possibility of an open door. What if it was possible? How differently would you start to live your life from this very different worldview? And so you don't need to be a math wizard or a physicist or a scientist to understand the principles of how quantum physics can transform the reality of your life. And so if you can understand that it is a unified field of information and of energy. So we have the lemon line, this lemon, above the lemon and then below the lemon. Above is the consciousness, below the subconsciousness. So people call this subliminal. And then you've got above conscious. How do we access the subliminal? How do we access the subconscious? By going within, And this is when I speak about the internal arts. In order to access the quantum field, we have to go within so that we can access the subliminal, below the lemon line, below the conscious line. And so if you are unified with this consciousness, then the energy of everybody, the energy of everyone, everything, every place, every time within this vast unified field of all potentials, it's like when in this world, I am connected to my body, my hand, it's been made manifest. That's how easy you can be connected and attached to the thoughts and the ideas in the quantum field, because whatever is thought about in the quantum, the thought sends a signal out. But you have to also understand the law of vibration, the law of frequency, so that you can attract the thought to become a manifestation in this world. It already exists. You just need to make it become a reality. And so it's the potential of intentional observing the potential and understanding the laws so that it can become a quantum event. So let me give you this example. How many times have you experience, Ken, people in your world or even yourself, when we have a thought, the thought is already planted in the quantum field, because you've got to go internal, right, in order to access it. So when we have a thought, it already exists as a potentiality. Now you got to Goya, get off your ass. It's not about sitting there and going, I'm going to manifest this. It's now, because what happens now, you got to act. Now the motion, the emotion, put it in motion. When you strive for it, that thought now starts to become more and more of a reality. But when you have the thought and you do no thing, the law is that thought, whatever gets put into the quantum field, must be made manifest. And so I call them the ideas fairies, right? The ideas fairies say, okay, there is this idea that has been put into the quantum field. It was put into the quantum field by Ken, but he's done no thing. He's done nothing to strive, right? Because if you strive for it, it folds space and time and it's yours, right? But Ken doesn't want to do anything about it. He's just thought of it, whether it be life or he's too busy or it's too hard. And so the ideas fairies takes that opportunity and says, hey, Joe, do you want this idea? Because the law is it's got to be made manifest. And Joe says, no, mate, it's too hard. I'm too busy. I got to, raise money. I got to work more. I got to do that. The ideas fairies does not discriminate. All right, Joe, no problem. And then the ideas fairies say, hey, Jane, there's this idea that has been put into the quantum field. Do you want it? Jane says, hell yeah. Who do I need in my orbit to help me to get to where I want to go faster? What do I need to do to feel the way I want to feel so that I can remain high vibration? The higher your vibration, when you tap in, you do not experience fear, shame, guilt, which has the same vibration as death. The higher your vibration, the more magnetic you become. I teach a course called Magnetic as Fuck, right? And so we magnetize potentials. We magnetize people into our orbit to help us to get to where we want to go faster. And then Jane says, give the idea to me. And so Jane's across the other side of the world. She strove for this idea. She's got it into action. She's goyed. She's got off her ass. She's done all these things, and now she has a whole posse behind her helping her to make this idea be made manifest. And then Ken on the other side of the world says, she stole my idea. No, she didn't. You just didn't act fast enough. So the universe rewards the unreasonably determined. And this is when we get really, really excited about life, because we understand then that we are masters of our destiny and not victims of our history.
How much time, I know this is a dumb question, but how much time does a new practitioner need to put into this actual act? Is this something that I need to carry on in my mind constantly? Or do I set aside a specific time in the morning, in the night, or the afternoon to kind of tap into this subliminal vibe?
As I said, and this is a really important part, it starts with the decision that it becomes your way of being. It can't be a once-off thing. And so when I say shamanism is a way of life, it's a way of being. And so the quantum field does not respond to what we want. The quantum field responds to who we are. The quantum field responds to who we are being, who we have become. It responds to how we feel every day. The feeling now is the secret. The feeling is the secret. And so what if you made a decision to, as much as possible, access nature's medicine so that I am continually in states of awe and wonder? What if I made the conscious decision to not gossip, to not buy into people's stories they tell themselves about themselves and believe? What if I protect my vibration like my life depends upon it, because it does, so that I'm not accepting clients or new students who are not ready, because I'm protecting my vibration. I want to be inspired. I want to work with people who are a pleasure to be with. I want to hang around inspiring people. And so to answer your question, what if it was a decision that you operate in this state all the time? Why? Because the science says when we are of this vibratory frequency, we start to magnetize. Magnetism is a universal law. It is a law of the universe. And this is what I mean by we start to really tune into the physics of it all, the understanding, the science of it all. And so David Hawkins, a very prominent scientist in this work, he has a book called Power versus Force, if your listeners want to start to get deeper into this work. And so he talks about stages of consciousness. Stages of consciousness. And so the stage of consciousness, for example, if I'm in the presence of someone who is gossiping, if someone who is in states of fear, victim dialogue, they love the significance of the feelings of guilt and shame, that is when our heart is contracted. Then is when we suffer, and our torus field, our electromagnetic signature is so contracted, we are going to magnetize fuck all. And so what if we made the decision, what do I need to do to feel the way I want to feel so that my vibration is higher? What semantics do I need to study? What somatics do I need to practice? What soulmatic work do I need to manipulate and influence my energy so that I can become expansive in states of love and joy and gratitude and enlightenment and acceptance and willingness, which makes me more magnetic, and then life becomes fun. So to answer your question, it is a decision to do life very differently. It is a constant cultivation of a practice. And also to understand that there's also this beautiful state of surrender. What do I mean by that? Because this human mind, cannot manifest as much as the quantum field can manifest. And so the idea goes out into the quantum field, and we trust through direct experience. I trust like I trust that the event managers and the ideas fairies in the quantum field have opportunities and stories and people I need to meet and businesses I need to create and adventures I need to have, which is far more exciting than this little human mind can possibly imagine.
See, and this is not the regret that I live with, but the frustration of hearing this information many years ago, at least 15 years ago, through Esther Hicks and Abraham and all of that work that they did. And why, I question myself as I'm listening to you, why didn't I capture this at that moment 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and run with it? But I know
because you weren't ready, Ken. You weren't at the stage of development yet. You weren't developed yet. It's like teaching my teenage children, my teenage daughter, the things that I know. There's no point in me pushing that. I need to hold her in that space. She's a teenager. I can't force her to be a 40-year-old. She's not at the stage of development yet. And so that's what the developmental stage is. What stage of spiritual development are you at? You were still in conventional stage, wanting to fit in like everyone else. You hadn't developed yet. And now you are at the development stage. Now you're ready for the work. You just need a teacher or a coach to accelerate yourself. Give yourself some grace. Give yourself some grace.
Thank you. I need to hear that because, again, 15 years ago, I really listened to the work of Esther Hicks and Abraham and all of those ideas, and it made a lot of sense to me, just like it's making sense to me now. But I am thinking about when I walk away from this podcast episode today, it is a decision, a conscious decision right now that I'm going to make. But I'm worried, like a decision to go to the gym, the decision to meditate, all of these things that I do in my life. How am I going to get a stronghold on the habitual side of tapping into the things that you're talking about? That's my biggest concern.
Is that a pattern for you, to be worried about your will?
Yes, it is.
And so that's the pattern we need to interrupt, because it sounds like the pattern of, here's the thing. Everything is a cultivation of a practice. I have to hold myself accountable to myself. I also surround myself. It's another answer to the question, who do I need in my orbit to help me to get to where I want to go faster, right? And so, for example, with me going to the gym, oftentimes I get ensconced with work, and before I know it, oh my God, we work in quantum time. It's nighttime. I've done nothing to move my body. I have a trainer to whip my ass. I live near the ocean, so that it's a walk away from the gym, a walk away from sunrise. So to hold myself accountable, as well as to have others hold me to account as well. And so we never underestimate the power of a decision. Who do I need in my orbit to help me to get to where I want to go faster? In business and in life, I'm very much a global thinker. I understand what fuels me. I understand what drives me. And so I think macro. I need to surround myself with the micro, the ones who are so control freak, detail driven, who tell me what to do. Who do I need in my orbit to help me to get to where I want to go faster? And so it's a case of if you're worried, and if that is your pattern, the first thing I always say is to give yourself some grace, Ken. And if consistency, if persistency is your thing, give yourself some grace. What has my life already demonstrated? What has my life already demonstrated? Can you tap into all those times where you were persistent, where you were driven with purpose, such as this successful podcast of yours? And then when you tap into, oh, what about that time I did that? How did I succeed there? And you make the decision to apply the same formula to how you succeeded in that respect. And so I think also sometimes the pain isn't big enough yet. It doesn't hurt as much yet. When it hurts enough, you're going to do it.
Amazing. I'm speechless because it resonates inside of me. It truly does. This information.
Which part inside of you does it resonate in?
They're looking for the patterns of persistence. Like, what have I done consistently? I've meditated consistently for 4 years. I've gone to the gym consistently for a lot of years. The podcast has been very consistent.
Yes.
And these are all naturally driven things. But this mindset of what you're talking about, of tapping into the subliminal, I've known about it for 15 years, and I brush up with it like what we're doing right now all the time, but I've never really made a decision. I've never put my foot down and said, you know what, I am now going to decide to do things differently and tap into it.
Come into my world. Life gets very, very exciting. I have students all around the world, and life gets fun. Why does it get fun? It's the realization, far out, I have the power. I have the power to influence my future in this way that is so much faster than the sense of pushing shit uphill that I've done for all these years. And, I had a Christmas gathering of some of my Sydney students the other day. And my God, there was some serious hotness in the room. Everyone is just vibrant and glowing, and because you can feel it and you can see it. Very different people to when they first started with me. And when we really look back, it's just happened in quantum time. And so it's the work, it's the accountability. We meet online every Monday, or we meet to do retreats, we meet to do all these things. And when you're in the orbit and you have all these people together with their electromagnetic signatures vibrating at this frequency, far out, life gets fun.
Yeah.
We're not alone.
Will you ever bring this knowledge and experience to Vietnam?
I haven't thought about it yet, but I am planting seeds in the States. I have more and more students from the US. I'm also, I've launched a new retail product. It's Tiger Purr Chai. I have a distributor now in the US. So leveraging is very much part of my personality. And so as an international speaker, I'm speaking more in the US. I now have a distributor for my chai in the US. I've got more students in the US, and that's when I met you, hanging out with some people in LA. So it will be US before Vietnam.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for opening up and opening my heart, my eyes, my mind today. It's been... We've
only scratched the surface, right?
Yes, we did, and we did scratch the surface, but we also went very deeply for me. And I can imagine, our listeners or our audience that are getting a taste of this for the first time. It's not woo, it's not woo woo, and it's not that abstract, because all of this could be translated into Christianity, Buddhism, Muslims, the way these things are, it's faith-based the way that you're saying, but it's codified differently throughout the world in different times. And, you could color
What
things.
if the faith was on self?
But it is.
On self-leadership and self-mastery,
Right.
that we're not codifying or worshipping someone other or something other than ourselves. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that either, but the power is in here.
Right.
This is where the power is.
I think, let's just say Jesus Christ for the sake of argument. He taught that, or if you, in the Bible, it says that we are him, he is us. So it's not that far removed if you think about it on a theology level, right? Like if we get really deep into this sort of this metaphysical way of thinking of Jesus Christ as being part, and then there's like the idea of the Holy Trinity, which is God the Father, the Holy Spirit. And if they are one and we are one, then it's all the same, right? It's really one big energetic universe that we're all really a part of ourselves. We're giving energy to ourselves, but it's just all a really not a messy bundle, but a very neat bundle if we can break it down the way you're thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the word God, God, if we are God and we have the God mind, God, God, is the grand organized design. The grand organized design. And if we are part of the grand organized design and we abide by, understand, or have knowledge of the universal laws, the laws of the universe that happens time and time again, regardless of race, of creed, of sex, of background, these are universal laws. If we had an understanding of this, how would we do life very, very differently?
Right.
That's when we can become free, because the more perspectives we can hold, the more free we will become.
Pauline, thank you so much for today. I really cherish.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Right.
Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. The Vietnamese is produced by Brittany Tran. Special thanks to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can subscribe, like, and comment. Please rate and give us a review wherever you find our podcasts.